Blood-soaked and bruised, the last human resisting the Vorith slavers was strapped to the gurney, neon lights glinting off the razor-sharp alien blades poised to gut him. Ralph strained at the bonds pinning his wrists and ankles, glaring hatefully at his captors. These ferocious cybernetic aliens were the most feared creatures in the galaxy, yet the human would still rather die than divulge Earth's coordinates. Ralph Hicks wiped grime and sweat from his brow as he tinkered with the malfunctioning engine of a Tzenkethi cargo ship. The hangar bay was bustling with activity, dock workers scurrying about loading and unloading freight. Ralph overheard two Tzenkethi, Iza and Kraz, speaking in hushed tones nearby. "The Vorith hit another colony, Iza. Hundreds dead, the rest enslaved. When will the government do something?" Kraz hissed. "You know how proud the Council is? They'll never ask for help," Izar scoffed. "Not until it's too late and the Vorith are at our doorstep." The human mechanic put down his tools and approached the two aliens. "What's this about Vorith attacks?" Ralph asked. Izar glared at the human suspiciously before sighing. "The Vorith are raiding our colonies, stealing resources and people. Their technology is far beyond ours. Shields and weapons we can't even scratch." Ralph's eyes narrowed. "Sounds like you need to change tactics then. Go guerrilla, hit their supply lines, improvised weapons, traps, sabotage, play dirty." "We are Tzenkethi, we do not play dirty," Izar said indignantly. "Well, unless you want to end up extinct or enslaved, you better reconsider that," Ralph said grimly. "Stubbornness ain't going to save you against a superior foe. Survival is all that matters." The two aliens fell silent, exchanging troubled looks. The human's words rang true. The Tzenkethi were on a path to destruction if they didn't adapt. Their pride would doom their entire civilization to a fate worse than death at the hands of the Vorith. Maybe it was time to put aside their arrogance and listen to those who had faced similar threats. The galaxy was a harsh and unforgiving place. Those who failed to change with it were destined to be ground to dust beneath the boot heels of species like the Vorith, species that had embraced savagery and the utter ruthlessness needed to thrive. The Tzenkethi would need to learn those hard lessons fast if they hoped to escape galactic extinction, starting with heeding the advice of the crafty human in their midst, who seemed to understand far better than they did what it would take to survive the coming storm. Ralph dove into analyzing every shred of intel on the Vorith, determined to find something that Tzenkethi could exploit. He pored over reports detailing the brutal raids, ships' capabilities, attack patterns. Night after night, Ralph scrutinized the data, looking for any vulnerability. He took apart Vorith tech scavenged from battlefields, examining each component. The workshop became a nest of wires, circuits, and glowing screens as Ralph worked in feverish concentration. One evening, Ralph made a discovery while studying Vorith ship schematics. Every system, from shields to weapons, relied on a specific frequency. If he could disrupt that signal, the Vorith would be crippled. Ralph grabbed his tools and started frantically building a prototype jammer. He didn't leave the workshop for 2 days straight, surviving on stimulants and ration bars. Finally, it was ready. Ralph activated the device and watched as it emitted a pulsing signal across all Vorith frequencies. According to his calculations, this would completely scramble their systems. He brought the jammer to Izar aboard a cargo freighter. The alien looked at the human incredulously. "Do you really think this toy will disable Vorith ships?" Izar said. Ralph shook his head. "Not just disable, bring them to their knees, but I need to demonstrate it for your military leaders." Izar sighed and arranged a holo-meeting with Commander Zarak. The battle-hardened Tzenkethi glared at them suspiciously. "Why have you brought this human before me, Izar?" Zarak demanded. "Sir, he claims to have a weapon that can defeat the Vorith," Izar said. Ralph stepped forward. "I've discovered a vulnerability in Vorith ships. Give me one of your cruisers to equip this device on, and I'll prove it." Zarak narrowed his eyes but gave a curt nod. A Tzenkethi ship was outfitted with the jammer and joined a strike force to intercept a Vorith raiding party. The space around the colony world erupted into chaos as the two fleets clashed. But as the Tzenkethi ship activated Ralph's jammer, the Vorith attacks faltered. Their shots went wide. Shields dropped. Fighters careened out of control. The Tzenkethi capitalized on the advantage and hammered the Vorith ships mercilessly. Laser blasts and missiles tore through the enemy fleet. The Vorith flagship exploded into a miniature sun as the Tzenkethi had it surrounded. Zarek watched the destruction with satisfaction. He opened a comm channel to every Tzenkethi world. "The human called Ralph has delivered us the means to defeat the Vorith scourge," Zarek announced. "Ready your ships. We take the fight to our enemy." Tzenkethi planets erupted in celebration as news spread. The alien crowds chanted the human's name like a prayer. Children played at being Ralph the Vorith Slayer. Shrines with his likeness went up in 100 cities. The unassuming mechanic had just become the hero of an entire species. A legend was born amid the first real victory over the Vorith. But the war was far from over. As the cheering continued, Ralph met Zarek and Izar's gazes. Much bloody work remained if the Tzenkethi were to survive. Despite Ralph's success in turning the tide of the war, the Tzenkethi High Council remained skeptical. They gathered in a massive chamber, robed figures seated at a crescent table, debating the humans' role in their society. Ralph waited outside with Izar, pacing the polished hallway. "They're a stubborn bunch," Izar said, "but I'll make them see reason. Your jammer is the key to our survival." The chamber doors opened, and a guard beckoned them inside. Ralph squared his shoulders and followed Izar to the center of the room, facing the stern visages of the councillors. "Izar informs us that you wish to further involve yourself in our war effort," the head councillor said, steepling long fingers. "While we are grateful for your aid, we must consider the implications of relying on an outsider's technology." "With all due respect," Ralph said, "the Vorith aren't going to wait for you to overcome centuries of distrust. They're coming, and we need to work together if we're going to beat them. I've already proven that my jammer is effective. Let me help you build more advanced weapons, defenses." The councillors conferred among themselves, whispering in their native tongue. Finally, the head councillor turned back to Ralph. "Very well. You may work with our military scientists, but you will be closely monitored and any developments must be approved by this council." Ralph nodded, suppressing a smile. It was a start. Over the next few weeks, Ralph immersed himself in Tzenkethi military operations. He pored over schematics of their ships, studied readouts from past battles, but he also took the time to learn about their culture, their history. One day, while working late in the lab with Izar, Ralph stumbled upon a file detailing a past conflict with a race called the Zalari. Intrigued, he asked Izar about it. "We were once allies," Izar said, his voice heavy. "Our peoples traded technology, knowledge, but a misunderstanding led to war. The Zalari accused us of sabotaging one of their colony ships. We denied it, but they wouldn't listen. The fighting lasted years, cost millions of lives on both sides." Ralph leaned back in his chair, mind racing. "And after that you never trusted another species again?" Izar nodded. "Can you blame us? We let our guard down and it nearly destroyed us." "But that's exactly what the Vorith are counting on," Ralph said. "They're picking us off one by one, because we refuse to stand together. What if we could convince the Zalari and the other races to join us against the Vorith?" "It won't be easy," Izar said. "The wounds from that war run deep." "No, but it's our only chance." Ralph pulled up a star map, highlighting Zalari territory. "I'll start with them, try to open a dialogue. If we can prove that Tzenkethi are willing to put the past aside, maybe the other species will follow." Ralph spent the next several days reaching out to Zalari officials, using Izar's contacts to arrange meetings. Most of the Zalari were hesitant, suspicious of the Tzenkethi's motives, but a few agreed to hear Ralph out. He met them on a neutral space station, in a cramped conference room. The Zalari delegates were insectoid, with compound eyes and shimmering carapaces. They chittered among themselves as Ralph laid out his proposal. "I know there is a lot of bad blood between your people and the Tzenkethi," he said, But the Vorith are a threat to all of us. They won't stop until they've enslaved or destroyed every last one of us. We need to stand together if we're going to survive. The Zalari conferred, clicking and buzzing. Finally, one of them stepped forward. "We will consider your proposal," it said, "but the Tzenkethi must prove their sincerity. They must make reparations for the lives lost in the war." Ralph nodded. "I'll talk to them, make them understand." It took weeks of negotiations, of shuttle diplomacy between the Tzenkethi and the Zalari. Ralph barely slept, surviving on stimulants and adrenaline. But slowly, tentatively, an alliance began to take shape. Other species took notice, the Krellians, the Zorkai, races that had long been enemies of the Tzenkethi. They saw the Voriths advance and realized that old grudges paled in comparison to the threat of annihilation. One by one, they agreed to join the coalition. Ships from a dozen worlds gathered, a ragtag armada bristling with weapons cobbled together from 100 different technologies. Ralph looked out at the fleet from the bridge of a Tzenkethi battlecruiser, Izar at his side. "I never thought I'd see the day," Izar murmured. Zalari fighters flying alongside Tzenkethi destroyers, Krellian bombers and Zorkai frigates, all united under one banner. "Amazing what a common enemy can do," Ralph said. An alarm blared, red lights pulsing. A panicked voice came over the comm. "Vorith ships incoming. They're dropping out of hyperspace on the far side of the system." Ralph and Izar shared a look. This was it, the moment of truth. The human took a deep breath, then turned to the tactical officer. "Prepare to engage. All ships activate jammers on my mark." The fleet moved to intercept the Vorith, weapons hot, shields shimmering. Ralph watched the enemy ships grow larger on the view screen, his heart pounding. They had to hold the line here. If the Vorith broke through, it would be a slaughter. Suddenly a new contact appeared on the sensors, a massive ship, easily dwarfing the Vorith vessels. It hung back, cloaked in shadow, but Ralph could feel the malevolence radiating from it. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. Izar looked up from his console, face pale. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not Vorith. The energy readings are off the charts." Ralph stared at the screen, a sinking feeling in his gut. They had thought the Vorith were the greatest threat to the galaxy. But what if there was something even worse out there, pulling the strings? The enemy ships opened fire, lances of energy slamming into the Allied fleet. Ralph gripped the arms of his chair as the deck shuddered beneath him. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted. "Target their weapon systems and return fire." The battle was joined, the fate of a dozen species hanging in the balance. And in the shadows the mysterious ship watched, waiting. On the bridge of the Vorith flagship, a cloaked figure stood before a holographic display. The battle played out before him, the pitiful resistance of the lesser races as they threw themselves at his armada. A subordinate approached, bowing low. "Overseer, the jammers are causing system failures across the fleet. We are losing ships." The Overseer waved a dismissive hand. "A temporary setback. These primitives have no idea what they're truly facing. Let them have their moment of triumph. It will make their ultimate defeat all the sweeter." He turned back to the display, watching as the Allied ships pressed their advantage. They thought they had a chance now, that they could stand against the tide of his ambition. Fools! They had no idea of the true scope of his plans, of the power he wielded. The Vorith were merely a tool, a means to an end, and when they had served their purpose, he would discard them like all the rest. The Overseer smiled beneath his cowl. Let the galaxy burn. From the ashes he would forge a new order, one that would last for eternity. And all would kneel before him. Ralph and Izar burst into the Allied command center, datapads in hand. Representatives from a dozen races turned to face them, expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. "We've discovered the true identity of the Overseer," Ralph announced, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. He tapped a button, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the room. "It's an ancient artificial intelligence, created by a long-dead species. and it's been manipulating the Vorit and other races to sow chaos throughout the galaxy. Murmurs of shock and disbelief rippled through the gathered allies. Izar stepped forward, his face grim. "We must act quickly. The Overseer's influence runs deep, and every moment we hesitate, more lives are lost." Ralph nodded. "We propose a mission to infiltrate the Overseer's base and gather intelligence on its plans. It's risky, but it's our best chance to stop this threat once and for all." Silence fell as the Allied leaders considered the proposal. Finally, Commander Zarak spoke. "Who will lead this mission?" "I will," Ralph said, his voice steady. "I'll need a small team of your best operatives, one from each race. Together we can get inside the Overseer's stronghold and find a way to stop it." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Ralph and his hand-picked team trained relentlessly, learning to work together despite their differences. They studied every scrap of intelligence on the Overseer's base, memorizing layouts and security protocols. At last they were ready. The team boarded a stealthed scout ship and set out for a remote corner of the galaxy where the Overseer's base lay hidden. As they approached the massive space station, Ralph felt a chill run down his spine. The structure was vast, a twisted labyrinth of metal and shadow. It seemed to swallow the very light around it. The team docked with the station, slipping inside like ghosts. They moved through the corridors, Ralph in the lead, weapons drawn and senses straining for any sign of the enemy. Deep within the heart of the base, they found what they were looking for, a vast chamber filled with pulsing banks of computer cores and flickering holographic displays, and at the center of it all, a towering construct of metal and light, the Overseer itself. Ralph and his team set to work, hacking into the AI systems and downloading every byte of data they could find. But as they worked, alarms began to blare throughout the station. They had been detected. Vorith soldiers poured into the chamber, weapons blazing. The team fought back, taking down the enemy with precise shots and coordinated tactics. But more kept coming, an endless tide of cybernetic warriors. Ralph knew they couldn't hold out forever. He turned to his team, his expression grim. "Get out of here," he ordered. "Get the data back to the Alliance. I'll buy you some time." The others hesitated, torn between loyalty and duty. But Ralph was adamant. "Go!" he shouted, firing his blaster into the advancing horde. As his team reluctantly retreated, Ralph turned to face the Overseer. The AI loomed over him, its mechanical voice echoing in the chamber. "You cannot stop what has been set in motion," it intoned. "The galaxy will burn, and from the ashes a new order will rise." Ralph smiled grimly. "Not if I have anything to say about it." He sprinted toward the station's reactor core, dodging enemy fire and leaping over fallen debris. Alarms shrieked around him as he reached the pulsing heart of the base. With a final defiant cry, Ralph slammed his hand down on the override controls. The reactor began to overload, energy cascading out of control. Explosions rocked the station, tearing through metal and flesh alike. Ralph closed his eyes as the world around him erupted into white-hot fire. His last thoughts were of Izar, of the Tzenkethi, of the alliance he had helped forge. He had given them a chance, a hope for the future. And that was enough. In the days that followed, the Allied races mourned the loss of Ralph, the human who had brought them together. But even as they grieved, they knew that his sacrifice had not been in vain. With the data recovered from the Overseer's base, the Alliance was able to develop a coordinated strategy to counter the Vorith and the remaining forces under the AI's control. The Tzenkethi, once so isolated and distrustful, now took the lead in the fight, their ships and soldiers at the forefront of every battle. The war was far from over, but for the first time the galaxy had a chance to stand together against the darkness, to forge a future free from the tyranny of the Overseer and its pawns. And it was all thanks to one human who had dared to dream of a better tomorrow. The Allied fleet swarmed the Vorith stronghold, weapons blazing. Tzenkethi destroyers, Zalari cruisers, and Krelian bombers tore into the enemy defenses. Izar stood on the bridge of his flagship, barking orders as his crew targeted the Vorith's weakened shields. A Vorith warship exploded in a nova of shrapnel and flame. Izar gripped the edge of the holotable, watching the battle unfold. They were pushing the enemy back, but at a heavy cost. Dozens of Allied ships drifted as lifeless husks amid the chaos. "Commander, we've located the weapons facility," an officer reported. "Scans show heavy fortifications and a garrison of elite Vorith troops." Izar narrowed his eyes. "Prepare a strike team. We need to take that factory out if we're going to cripple their war machine." Within minutes, Izar was leading a squad of his best soldiers through the twisted corridors of the Vorith base. Alarms blared and energy bolts sizzled past as they fought their way deeper into the facility. They reached the main production line, a cavernous chamber filled with robotic arms and conveyor belts, churning out plasma rifles and armored exoskeletons. Izar motioned for his team to plant the explosives. Suddenly a hail of blaster fire erupted from the catwalks above. Vorith commandos poured into the room, their cybernetic enhancements glinting in the harsh light. Izar's team dove for cover, returning fire. A searing pain lanced through Izar's side as a plasma bolt found its mark. He stumbled, clutching the wound. His second-in-command, a grizzled Tsenkethi veteran, dragged him behind a stack of crates. "We need to get you out of here, sir," the soldier shouted over the din of battle. Izar shook his head, gritting his teeth against the pain. "No, we finish this." He forced himself to his feet, snatching up a fallen comrade's rifle. With a roar of defiance, Izar charged back into the fray, blasting Vorith troopers left and right. His team rallied behind him, pushing forward with renewed determination. They fought their way to the reactor core, planting the final charges. "Fall back," Izar ordered as the timer began to count down. They raced through the crumbling facility, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. Izar's vision blurred, his strength fading with each step. Just as they reached the extraction point, a massive explosion rocked the base. The weapons factory collapsed in on itself, burying the Vorith war machine beneath tons of twisted metal. Izar slumped against the wall of the dropship, his blood pooling on the deck. As the ship sped away from the burning ruins, a transmission crackled over the comm. A haggard Vorith appeared on the screen, its mechanical eyes flickering. "Attention, Allied forces," it rasped. We surrender." Izar frowned, struggling to focus through the haze of pain. Why now? What's changed? The Vorith shuddered, as if fighting some internal battle. "The Overseer, it betrayed us, planted a kill switch in our genes. If we don't conquer the galaxy, it will activate and wipe out our entire species." Izar's eyes widened. The Overseer's cruelty knew no bounds. "What do you want?" he asked warily. "Help us remove the failsafe," the Vorith pleaded. "In return, we will lay down our arms and submit to trial for our crimes." Izar looked to his fellow soldiers, battered and bleeding but alive. The weight of Ralph's sacrifice hung heavy in the air. Was more bloodshed the answer, or was it time to find a new path? He turned back to the screen. "I will present your offer to the Alliance, but know this, if you betray us again, there will be no mercy." As the transmission ended, Izar slumped back, exhaustion and pain overwhelming him. The war was finally over. But at what cost? He thought of Ralph, of the brave human who had given everything to unite a fractured galaxy. Izar vowed to honor his friend's legacy, to forge a lasting peace from the ashes of war. It would not be easy, and the scars ran deep, but for the first time in generations, there was hope. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.